Hi.
Hello. Welcome back, Misfits, and welcome back to a new episode. And today we're continuing the episode that we never finished last week.
We couldn't finish.
And we're talking about fasting.
Because we wanted to put too much stuff in one episode. And then, we get excited and we start talking.
Yes.
And we're like, oh, we should probably leave this for another one.
Yes. And, one of the things that you guys might not know is that we're trying to keep our episodes under like 20 minutes because that's what we feel is like a nice like bite-sized episode where you can listen to it on a car drive or whatever it is that you're doing. It's just short and sweet. If y'all want longer episodes, let a homie know.
Yeah, let us know.
Shoot it on Instagram. Let us know. If you have my number, text me, text Yadi, let us know.
Message
us
or whatever.
We have the content. So we will definitely.
We can talk sometimes.
If you want 30 minutes, 45, an hour, let us know. All right?
Yeah.
All right. So now, back to the task at hand. We're going to talk about fasting, right? And what is fasting? Fasting is hard.
Yeah.
But no, really. No.
No, really.
Fasting is difficult. But what is fasting? Mainly, fasting helps put ourselves on the altar. And by that, we mean that it is an act of sacrifice. Fasting basically helps develop self-mastery and self-discipline. So overall, like that is a very general statement, but overall, that is what fasting is.
Right.
So fasting is the act of denying the flesh or what your body wants and focusing and relying more on God and what he wants. So less of us, more of him, and that's a song.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Can you sing us a verse?
Yeah. So basically, to explain what we mean, we're going to head to the Bible, right? Because that's what we do. So we're going to read Isaiah 58, 1-9. And we're going to read it in the Message version because we want to make it plain. And when you want to make it plain, you use the Message version. Right. When you want to make it a little fancy, you use KJV, etc.
The Message just kind of summarizes it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So here we go. Shout, a full-throated shout. Hold nothing back. A trumpet blast shout. Tell my people what's wrong with their lives. Face my family, Jacob, with their sins. They're busy at worship and love studying all about me. To all appearances, they are a nation of right living people, law abiding, God honoring. They ask me, what's the right thing to do? And love having me on their side. But they also complain, why do we fast and you don't look our way? Why do we humble ourselves and you don't even notice? Well, here's why. And this is God. This is the prophet Isaiah, but this is God. Well, here's why. The bottom line on your fast days is profit. You drive your employees much too hard. You fast, but at the same time, you bicker and fight. You fast, but you swing a mean fist. The kind of fasting you do won't get your prayers off the ground. Do you think this is the kind of fast day I'm after? A day to show off humility? To put on a pious long face and parade around solemnly in black? Do you call that fasting? A fast day that I, God, would like? This is the kind of fast day I'm after. To break the chains of injustice, get rid of exploitation in the workplace, free the oppressed, cancel debts. What I'm interested in seeing you do is sharing your food with the hungry, inviting the homeless poor into your homes, putting clothes on the shivering ill-clad, being available to your own families. Do this and the lights will turn on, and your lives will turn around at once. Your righteousness will pave your way. The God of glory will secure your passage. Then when you pray, God will answer. You'll call out for help and I'll say, here I am.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's great.
Just saying
That's great.
what it really means to fast versus what they were doing at the time. And they called it fasting.
Right.
So we also see in Isaiah 58, it's telling us that we fast to become more like Jesus. We don't fast to call attention to ourselves, to impress people, or to complain. We fast to focus on the things of God. We also found a definition that we think defines fasting pretty well. It says, fasting is a temporary renunciation of something, like food, in order to intensify our expression of need for something greater, namely God and his work in our lives.
Which is great. It's a pretty simple definition. But basically, you were human, so your body needs food. Like, without food, you will die. But so for a short period of time, you don't eat because you are sacrificing that fleshly desire for God. Like, that's huge. It's like other than like sacrificing our own lives, it's probably the biggest thing that we could do.
Right.
It's like, I'm not going to eat and I'm going to be in pain and I'm potentially going to get headaches because I personally get headaches because I need God. Yeah.
Right.
It's awesome.
So every time you feel that, oh, like God's there. Yeah. I'm doing this for him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in Matthew 6:16, Jesus is speaking, and he starts out by saying, when you fast, not if you fast. So this tells us that fasting is something that is expected of us as followers of Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. So basically we have to do it, or it's part of our Christian walk.
Yes.
We fast as a symbol of hunger for God. That is to say, I care less about my body being hungry because I'm hungrier for God and my need for him. And that's kind of what you talked about. Like, yes, we know we're hungry when we're fasting because we don't have any food or whatever. But we're acknowledging that because we're recognizing that we're doing it for God.
Yes.
Yeah. We also wanted to share that there are different types of fasting. There is corporate fasting and individual fasting. So corporate typically means that you do it as a group, usually like a whole church. You're fasting together. You have specific reasons to do it, or prayer requests or anything like that. Like, let's say you're opening a new campus. You can also do, like, at the beginning of the year to kind of kick off, you do 21 days, prayer or fasting. That's something you can do as a church. So fasting, individual fasting is something, of course, that you do, and something maybe you have a petition or something specific. It could also have to do with these, but you're not doing it as a group. You're doing
right,
it,
right. And there's other types of fasting. So like if you have a friend that's fasting, or someone that that doesn't have to be your friend that's fasting, you can actually fast with them and basically fast for whatever they're fasting for. And it's as if you were praying for them. So it's like being in cahoots with your friend. It's like, oh, you want an answer for this? Well, I'm going to do it with you, right? And just standing in the gap with them. So you can also do that. And we don't have a name for that, but you could do that as well.
But
we're that's small group fasting.
Small group fasting. Friend fasting. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, that's good. Friend fasting.
But that's why we talk about how prayer and fasting go together, because you fast and you're not just fasting in the time that you're fasting.
Yeah.
You're praying. Right.
You're
kind of geared towards a specific goal or something that you're wanting an answer for, just a petition,
we're trying to get closer to God about, or yes.
Yeah. So that's why they're important together. There are also different fasts. The most common is, of course, like we talked about, food. So you abstain from food or drink. People have also fasted from other things like TV, social media, maybe going to certain places, or even talking to certain people, even fasting from sex if you're married, etc. So it just depends what it is that maybe what your petition is, or whatever the season is that maybe God's calling you to fast from.
Yeah. Or if your fast includes another person, like your spouse or whatever, in that case, like the Bible tells you to fast from sex for a certain amount of times. Like, it's in the Bible. You can go read that. Yeah. But basically, depending on your season of life and what it is that you're fasting for, there's all sorts of different things that you could do or fast from. Yeah. But traditionally it's usually just food and drink. Yeah.
When we fast, we give up something we need, or we think we need, for something greater. And of course, that greater is mainly God. So kind of like what we've already talked about, we're kind of putting ourselves less and acknowledging that we want God to work in us. Yeah. Fasting is a great way to cut things kind of cold turkey that are taking away from God. And in times, these things won't seem so important anymore. So a lot of times you can fast from, like, say, TV, social media, maybe certain types of food, where you can just cut that thing out of your daily routine, out of your life, and you'll notice just how much that frees you up. Yes. And then you kind of acknowledge, oh wow, that was taking up a lot more than I probably wanted to, and you have more time to focus on godly things. Right. Yeah. We've experienced this personally, like, for example, fasting from TV. You do that long enough, and then you just kind of get used to not watching TV, or like doing something instead of TV. Yeah, because you replace the TV watching time with something else, and then all of a sudden it's 6 months later and you're like, man, I haven't watched TV in a while. Mm-hmm. And like Yadi said, you use it to also like cut out things that maybe are like bad habits that you have. Yeah. It's like, I want to decrease my time watching TV, or I want to decrease my time on social media, playing video games, whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. And what you do is, instead of doing that thing that's taking up all of your time, instead of spending time with God, you replace it with spending time with God. So it's not a like, okay, I'm not going to eat food, or I'm not going to go on Instagram, and then I'm going to replace Instagram with Facebook, or Instagram with shopping, or Instagram with you replace whatever it is you're trying to eliminate or decrease with time with God. Yeah. That's or the habits focus. That are going to help you focus on God. Yes. So I'll just speak from something that happened to me recently, like a month ago or so. I fasted from TV for about 2 weeks. I didn't necessarily feel like, oh my gosh, I'm watching a lot, but for some reason I was feeling like I was just having it on for no reason, mm-hmm. and getting distracted by having it on, and then I wasn't sleeping that well, and just like other things. So, I felt from the Holy Spirit, like, you need to fast from TV. Like, you just have it on, like, it's meaningless, really. And I was like, no, you're right. It's been very distracting. So I did it for about 2 weeks, and it doesn't necessarily like, oh my gosh, the 2 hours that I was watching TV, I prayed now. Like it wasn't about that. It gave me peace, and it allowed me to like take care of things around my house, go to bed earlier, like things that helped me then focus on God.
Right.
More intentionally.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily mean like, oh, I stopped TV and I had to read my Bible and I had to pray. Like, no, not necessarily, but it gave me a peace during that time to be able to focus on some other things to allow me to have time with God. Something like that.
It helps with focus, and it helps with restructuring your priorities. So if you feel like your priorities are a little off, and because some other stuff is taking some of your time, then a fast is a really good way to kind of refocus and recenter and kind of just start a new chapter.
Yeah, and you see the importance of like that time that you had taken away, and so you kind of you can go back to it. Like, I'm not saying, oh, I'm not watching TV anymore, because I have, but it's definitely like not been this big deal. Like I don't watch.
It's different.
Every
time you come out of a fast, it's very different.
So that's just something personal that just happened to me. So it's very beneficial, and we'll tell you 6 other reasons why we think you should fast.
6 more reasons.
So fasting is biblical. So similarly to what we talked about, other things like tithing, we want to be obedient to what God's telling us, and like we read in that verse, when you fast, it is biblical that we fast. So we want to be obedient to that. Number 2, to restore and strengthen our relationship with God. So it's a way for us to reconnect with Him. Like we do pray, but sometimes there's other things we want to make it more focused, and because we are abstaining from something or eliminating something, it really does help us refocus.
Right, because sometimes we think we don't have time for God, right? We don't have time to read our Bible. We don't have time to do this. So going back to Yadi's example, basically, like if her TV watching was taking time away from reading the Bible or praying or whatever, she could potentially fast from TV and then replace that with reading the Bible. Yeah. So that's just an option that you also have. Yeah.
Those holy habits.
Yes, holy habit. Hashtag holy habits.
Bringing them back to prioritize those again. Number 3, it's a way to humble ourselves, similar to what we mentioned about caring less about ourselves and focusing on God. When we fast, you sacrifice something, right? So you're making that, whatever you're sacrificing, whatever you're fasting from, that's less than what we're acknowledging God is, right? Like, that's not as important. God is more important.
Right.
Number 4, it can help us hear God more clearly, because you're putting away other distractions, you're being intentional, so therefore you can hear God more clearly. You can combine this, of course, with prayer, like we talked about. So because you don't have those distractions or other things, then you can focus more clearly, and God's able to fill that space, if you will, to be able to talk to you and be able to answer your prayers or just confirm things, kind of like what we talked in the last episode about, prayer.
If you've never fasted, we challenge you to. You don't have to fast for a week. It could be a day, it could be 2 days, but just to experience what it is to hear from God when you are fasting, because there's something about the clarity that you have when you're fasting that He just downloads things on you that it's just like, yo, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Where did that come from? And it's just constant, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's just a different type of conversation with God. It's not realistic to continuously be fasting like forever, like every single day. You can make it a routine, right? Like Yadi's mom, for example, she fasts every week, like a day every week, and that's something that you can do. But it's not realistic to do it every single day for the rest of your life, right? So it's times of our lives that we take to just sacrifice it and give it back to God. But if you haven't, again, we just challenge you to do so you can have that experience of hearing from God when you have that clarity. Because it's amazing.
And just like you said, it doesn't have to be a long, it can be 1-2 days. Especially if you're kind of new to fasting, it is hard. Like we started off this episode, like fasting is hard. But just start
it's supposed to be hard too.
Exactly. Like,
right. If it's not hard, it's not a sacrifice.
Like,
so
what
if you're thinking about fasting from something that you're like, oh, I could go without that, it's not that. Pick something else.
Like, I'm gonna fast from coconut. Well, I don't really care about coconut.
Exactly.
Then why are you fasting from
peanuts? I'm allergic to peanuts. It doesn't count. It has to be difficult in order to be a sacrifice.
Absolutely. Number 5, it can enable the Holy Spirit to reveal your true condition. We don't always take the time to acknowledge how we are doing, and fasting can provide that clearness and point out what we need to work on. Fasting may even reveal things you didn't know were there, like overly relying on food or TV or a person. So again, it's just a point where you can just kind of see where you need to grow, where you need to improve, and by fasting, you're allowing that time to be able to do that.
Yeah, because you might decide to fast from something, and then like day 1, hour 5, you're like jonesing for whatever that
Yes,
is. Like, oh my God, I'm missing my show, or I haven't talked to this person, or whatever it is that you rely on. And that's the Holy Spirit being like, see, you do need to fast from this. Like, you're overly relying on this when you should just
definitely have a greater dependence on it
God.
than you thought.
Yeah, definitely. And what we want to do is have dependence on God and not the things of this world, or even overly relying on people. We always want to try and rely on God first as best we can. So
absolutely.
those things might come up when you're fasting, and if they do, don't freak out. Just tell God about it. He's
acknowledge
right there
it
with
and
you.
be like, okay, God, this
and
is
then
what I needed to
just
work on.
realize that that's something that you have to work on, and then just continue to work on it.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And number 6, what you receive during your fast can then be used to bless others and show God's grace. So again, we're allowing this space to God for God to answer us. And so a lot of times that can include the ones around you. You can share your testimony, like, hey, I just fasted and I received this, or this worked for me, and encourage others to, do the same and be able to receive something for themselves as well.
Yeah, because I think that sometimes, because fasting is difficult, it's not everyone's first response.
Yeah.
First you pray, or you talk to your friends, or, you go to your pastor, and you kind of try to do all these other things, like, let me read the Bible, and you do all these other things before you think about fasting.
Yeah.
Fasting seems dramatic.
Yeah.
And so
you kind of leave it till the end. Like,
yes.
I have been guilty of that. Like, I can, yes, I'll pray for you. Yes, I'll, do all these other things, talk to somebody about it. But fasting is hard.
Yes.
So I typically don't like run to fasting, but it's definitely something I'm working on to do more of.
Yeah.
That I know goes very, like we talked about, hand in hand with prayer. And so when you do it more often, you practice it, like you're able to just feel, God working in that.
Yeah. And it's, again, we're talking about holy habits in this series, and fasting is a spiritual discipline just like any other spiritual discipline. So it's like reading your Bible, like prayer, and we want to make fasting more mainstream.
Yeah.
For our
Christian
friends
so you
out there.
understand how powerful it is.
Yes.
And I'm just being honest, like for me it is a struggle.
Yeah.
But I'm working, that's one of my habits I'm working on. So, I'm right there with you. And if you haven't, like we said, if you haven't done fasting, then it's an opportunity. Try it for a day, try it for 2 days, try it for certain things, We just want you to know, like, it's such a powerful thing you can do just to grow in your faith and your relationship with God.
Yeah, and it's important and it's doable.
Yes.
You will not die.
I think sometimes we also, like, make it this huge thing. I'm not going to eat for, 24 hours.
Right.
And it's like, yes, it'll be hard, but you can survive.
Yes. Yes. And if you have any more questions or any questions at all, you can always reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction, or just tell you about our experiences with fasting. We've had several, and we can go from there. But we hope that you enjoyed this episode and learned something about last week's episode, prayer and now fasting.
You can link them together.
Yeah. And we'll be back next week with another holy habit. As always, this is Fran.
This is Yadi.
We are the Midtown Misfits, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Peace.